Hi there. It's the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a couple visual storytellers get together, walk around a topic, look at a topic, prod at the topic, see if it's still alive, and then talk about it some more. We think hard about visual storytelling, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I am a cartoonist and a teaching artist. The other host is...
Hi, I am Rob Stenzinger. I am a game and UX designer and creative coder in general. Yeah, and if you're watching the video, I have conjunctivitis, so just heads up. Hopefully, you won't catch it by watching the video. But anyway, we have an awesome guest with us today. Not that that segue could use a lot more help, but hey, video. What can you do? It's been a while since we've had Brandon Dayton on the show. It's
Brandon Dayton.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
The Brandon Dayton, yes.
How's it going?
Brandon Dayton, cartoonist, illustrator, author of Green Monk, which you can read on Tapastic. I'll pull that up.
That's right.
And then also, and one of the reasons we asked you to join us today. Oh, well, we should talk about what Green Monk is real quick. I'm gonna read the TV guide log line here that you have while I scroll through some pages. In a mythical Russia, a mysterious young boy is raised by an order of monks. As he grows to manhood, bizarre dreams and the call of destiny disturb the ideals of brotherhood and peace that define his idyllic home. Look at this art. Look at it.
Yeah. I need to hire you to do the voice, the audio version of the
audio book.
Yeah,
I'm sure, Brandon. If you want, grade school baseball coach voice for your, for your read, but you also have been doing a series of YouTube video essays. Which are really cool because like you film yourself drawing a piece and then you sort of talk this essay over top of the drawing, so you can watch this lovely piece of art happen, but then also it's layered on with this terrific, thoughtful contemplation about the nature of what we do as artists, and like not just like the checking in and the practice of it, but also encouraging people who aren't even artists to be artists, not just because, well, I love it, therefore you should too, but like pointing out like there's real practical implications of how your life improves by like just taking on some of the skill sets that an artist has to take on.
Sure, yeah.
And most recently, wait a minute, no, you have a new one that I haven't seen yet, Drawing from Memory.
I post on Thursday, so I just posted that one up. Yeah, that one's a little bit different because I'm actually demoing a memory drawing exercise. So it's kind of a fun. It's like it's this. You take an image and you basically look at it for 5 minutes and then you hide it and you draw as much as you can remember. Then you repeat that, 3 times, and you can. It's this amazing demonstration of how bad I am at this exercise. So.
I don't know about that. What's funny, I remember I happen to be podcasting from memory right now because back in episode, 104 of the Lean Into Artcast, we had you on as a guest, and you talked about sort of this style of monastic practice, and one of the things you mentioned is techniques, is drawing from memory.
Yeah.
That's we have a whole episode on that topic. And I can't wait to see what you've done between then and now.
Boy, you're going to be so disappointed, Rob.
I doubt it.
Basically, this exercise, that's about all I figured out since then, I guess. But no, I mean, yeah, sure, I guess.
Well, and also to mention, like, not to be tantalizing about some product that really isn't easily available, but like your workshop that we used to have. So we launched Lean Into Art with this line of, it was an event called 30 Classes in 30 Days. And Brandon, you had a workshop during that event, and then later it was packaged as a workshop for sale, download. And it was the most successful workshop we've sold. People wanted that. What was it called? The dynamic line work?
Yeah, foundations of dynamic line work. Actually, that video, I talked with you guys about it, and that's when people sign up for my email list on my website, they get that video. So
let's tell them where to go to get that.
Still mining that.
Where is it at? BrandonDayton.com?
Yeah, BrandonDayton.com. There's some link somewhere there that's just.
I'm gonna pull it up now and we'll put it on screen. All right.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm trying to find where you go.
Where does we sign up? Blog, portfolio, about.
You see, if I was smart, I would put it someplace that was easy to find.
Probably the upper right. I'm just going to offer that. Yes. So but you know what the trick is that that workshop is so desirable, people will look for this. Yeah.
Okay, here's the trick. Yeah, so on the side it says how to draw.
Yeah.
You can find it. There's a link that says 6 tips to get better at drawing. It's at the end of that. I also have a link that says how to ink. It's at the end of that too.
All right. So go to BrandonDayton.com, then go to the 6 tips to get better at drawing post, which won't disappoint you, I guarantee it. And then oh wow, there's some really nice art in here. And then at the end, you can sign up for his email list.
Yep.
And get your own copy of Foundations of Dynamic Line Work. I cannot underscore enough how valuable that video is.
Oh, thanks, Jerzy.
And I mean, like, this is where I get to also tip my hat to you a little bit. And I don't know if we got to tell this story last year, but was it last year or the year before? It was the year before at A2, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brandon came out
before it was ATCAF.
Yeah, back when it was called Kids Read Comics, and Brandon came and he was wounded. He had to get around.
Oh, that's right. That sucked.
And then I was like, "Hey, good news, Brandon! Your workshop's on the 4th floor."
Oh yeah. I made it.
What a hero! I mean, what a guy! Like Brandon was like, "Nope, kids need to be inspired. I'm there." Anyway, so are we ready to go on the ground and talk about some of these videos that you made and maybe pick them apart a little bit?
I'd love to. Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is, to set expectations, we're going to talk about 3 or so of Brandon's videos and sort of unbox the content in them and maybe like react to them a little bit, both Rob and I, and pick apart the ideas as a group before we go 10,000 feet up and think about like some of the more abstract aspects of this philosophizing about art. But the big idea is where we're going to go in about 2 seconds is talking about 2 ways to level up your art skills. But first, I got to play the music. I gotta play the. Oh, what should I play, Rob? How about
Sounds good.
Yeah, building anticipation with hopeful cadence and up tempo, major key playing. So Brandon, you got this whole video series on YouTube, and it's at youtube.com/Brandon Dayton or user Brandon Dayton. I want to talk about this 2 ways to level up your art skills essay that you posted recently.
Okay.
And I mean, I'll just pitch out like the two ways you talk about, and maybe we can like sort of deconstruct it together. But you talk about adding pages to your playbook and running the play more efficiently are the 2 ways to think about leveling up your art skills. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
So yeah, these are kind of just insights I gained as I was doing other things. I mentioned in the video, especially doing the Rubik's Cube. It was one of these things where, just for me as an artist, I really feel like you have to be able to have other things that you do that interest you, that challenge you, that you can be curious about. And so I got into doing Rubik's Cubes, 2 or 3 years back. I just decided, it's one of those things as a kid that was magical to me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And I don't just want to figure out how to do this. I want to figure out the fastest way to do it. Like, what's the fast way to do it? So I started studying what they call speed cubing, and I'm nowhere near as fast as like the best in the world. But it was just, as I went through the process, it was one of these things that just gave me some realizations about my own like, career and getting better in my own career. And just thought like, oh, wow, if I approached my own career in some of the same ways that I'm having to approach learning how to, solve Rubik's Cube, I could, grow in certain ways. So that was kind of the insight. I had that insight while I was like solving the Rubik's Cube. I'm like, well, I'm learning about learning. I was learning things about learning while I was doing the Rubik's Cube. And I think part of the thing is, I mean, all of us have spent so much of our lives focused on getting better at a certain skill. And so it's just like I've been trying to get better at drawing for so long that sometimes you kind of get lost in it, and you lose that perspective. So it was interesting to have this other experience and to kind of gain some more insight on learning and growth. So I don't know how much you want me to go into depth about the specific lessons I learned from solving a Rubik's Cube, but
yeah, I would love to hear all about it, and like let Rob and me like sort of react when we got a reaction. I mean, I'm already hearing like an addiction to learning itself nestled in there, right? And this is something, Rob, I think you talk about on the Art and Science Punks podcast that you do with Kate Stenzinger.
And it might have served kind of this purpose of, I guess, reviving that kind of excitement and addiction to learning. I mean, I definitely think I went through a period of burnout with art where I didn't want to do art. And that's probably why I was spending more time doing Rubik's Cube stuff. But yeah, so the way I like to describe it is that there's there's 4 different steps to this process of learning to solve a Rubik's Cube. The last 2 steps are the hardest to learn, because you have to learn these patterns. You have to learn, like, okay, you got to turn the right side half a turn, and the top you got to turn it a full turn. So you have to do these really complicated combinations of turns, and you have to memorize like 9, at a minimum 9, to be able to solve a cube. And now it's really hard. It takes a lot of time and effort to memorize and learn all those. In contrast to that, the first 2 steps of solving Rubik's Cube are really fast to learn, and they're kind of fun to learn. And so kind of what I talk about in the video, hey, my son's just saying hi. What I'm talking about in my video is basically how these kind of are illustrative of kind of these 2 ways of leveling up. So there's this idea of adding pages to the playbook, and that's kind of like the last 2 phases of learning to solve a cube. And so adding a page to your playbook is when you're bringing in a new skill. And up front, it's really costly to learn that new skill. But as soon as you learn it, you kind of have it there, you know. But then there's this idea of making the play more efficient, running the play, getting better at the play. And so there's these first 2 steps of learning the Rubik's Cube that are easy to learn, but really, really hard to get really good at. And so, like I explain in the video, it takes me about maybe 45, 50 seconds to do these first 2 steps. People that are really good at them, they do the first 2 steps in, 2 to 3 seconds. So I guess that's kind of the basic idea. It probably makes a lot more sense if you actually know about, what I'm specifically referencing in speed cubing.
What's funny is you were I think deep into the speed queuing when I came to visit you in September of, was it 2015? And I came home and I was like, man, like I'm telling Ann all about it. And so suddenly we got Rubik's Cubes in the house, and I got her a speed cube for Christmas
awesome.
that year. And so we're studying that whole thing that you were describing, and like we had to sit with these lists in front of us, write it out on a piece of paper, like, okay, so if there's a green on this side and a yellow on this side, this is the algorithm to run.
Yeah,
if there's a red on this side and a blue on that side, this is the algorithm to run.
Yeah.
And so we'd be sitting there just staring intently at this piece of paper going, okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So yeah, we could do it and we'd solve it, and it was really satisfying, but it took forever because we didn't have it all memorized, and we didn't instinctually know which play to run based on what conditions
you were seeing. Yeah. And once you learn those, it's muscle memory, and you're just doing this really fast movements, blah, 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 and that's hard to get faster at. But yeah, like I said, the first part, you have to make like little white cross on the bottom, and that people that are really good, they look at it for 15 seconds and then it's in 3 or 4 moves. They've figured it out. And so, yeah, and that's just like the same way with art, that as you're learning different art skills, you're going to learn construction and anatomy and perspective, and each one of those things you add to your playbook, it's kind of a lot of work up front to add it to your playbook. And that's, you can always make big leaps by adding a new page to your playbook. And so it's really satisfying because suddenly you're able to leave the realm of mortals and you're suddenly doing this thing that seems magical that you couldn't do before. And so the jump is really, really big when you first add those things to the playbook. But then there's this idea of how do you get better after that? And as an artist, it can be frustrating because you want to have that dramatic growth again. And the growth then comes just from repeating those plays and getting better and better and faster and refining them. And that's the difference between, mid-level artist and a great artist. You look at the things they do and it's like, I understand all the principles behind what this artist is doing, but they are just doing it at a higher, more efficient, level. So
I feel like that's where I am with color right now. Like I feel like the last Boulder and Fleet story I did, I can see where suddenly I was like, oh, I'm starting to get this whole like color theory thing, and then like it gets super garish in the middle of the story. It's like, wow, this like everything is green and red because those have a lot of drama to it. And then like it started to mellow out towards the end, and now that I'm working on this new book with Anne, it's like we're looking at the colors, and I'm kind of like frustrated at how much I'm relying on heuristics and guessing and trial and error, and like, well, maybe if we put these colors together, and it's not it didn't feel like it snapped the way it did with the Boulder and Fleet.
There's not that same dramatic like here we go type of thing.
Yeah, New World isn't opening up with this project when it comes to that part of it, right? And I'm like,
yeah, I totally get that. And that's also hard for me sometimes as an artist to be motivated in that phase. That's like, what's the word they use for that? It's like I can't remember the phrase. There's a phrase for that, like what's it called? When walking in the darkness, or there's some sort of like spiritual phrase for that that's like totally escaping me right now. But
Dark Night of the Soul, isn't it?
Dark Night of the Soul. Yeah, there we go.
We read a lot of the same books.
Yeah, just walking through that Dark Night of the Soul where it's not sexy, but you kind of just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Yeah. Right. Becomes a totally different experience at that point. And satisfying in a different way, but still satisfying if you can keep moving forward.
Rob, you're looking thoughtful.
Well, I know I'm hearing like getting interested in learning a new skill. That's it has this promise of sort of dramatic growth, is what you mentioned, Brandon, and but yet let's see, so did you pick the Rubik's Cube because it had an approachable sort of learning curve to experience that dramatic growth? Because some skills, for instance, I've chatted with a variety of artists about learning to code, and like that can have this longer reward cycle that it can feel like a grind in those beginning times. Even though there's like technically there's a new page in someone's playbook, it doesn't feel like they really can play it yet, because how do you have enough comfort, familiarity, capability, skill building to actually be able to experience that page and feel like, now I have added it and that feels good. But then there's this, so how do you the Rubik's Cube, did it have sort of that a short ramp or a longer ramp?
Well, I definitely wasn't aware of how steep the learning curve was going to be before I jumped into it. I think that's kind of the excitement of it, to jump into something like that and being like, here's this big monstrous challenge, And I've experienced to a small degree what you're talking about with coding. I've dabbled in coding, and I definitely haven't gotten far enough into it to really feel like, oh, I've just added this skill to my I haven't added this plate in my playbook. So I think I understand what you're saying there. But I think one of the things I'm trying to say is that there are kind of, I think, two levels to, or kind of two modes to it, right? That there is kind of that grind to it as well. So
how do you make that grind? Well, how do you weather that? How do you keep at it?
Oh, geez, that's a really good question. Yeah, I probably, that's really one of those things where I think it takes a certain amount of faith. Because anytime I'm making comics, that's completely the experience of making comics. I just barely put an update onto Tapastic for Green Monk that I started in the middle of last year.
Okay.
And so it was the payoff finally finishing it you know, took a long time to get there. But in the middle of it, I mean, this is where I think you get into the type of thinking where you do have to think about just one day at a time, kind of the cliche, one day at a time, putting one foot in front of the other. You
So
know,
grit.
the grit. I mean, you can't think about it as a race. You can't think too much about the finish line, right?
Oh, that's something. That was some language you used in one of your videos that I thought was really great. Is when you talked about how, when you're starting out on these kinds of things, the end is so abstract that it's
Yeah.
almost kind of pointless to think about it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what kinds of developments are going to happen between now and then. So being too goal oriented at the outset can distract you from what you need to attend to as you're learning the new things, right?
Yeah, I think that might have been the case. That's definitely how it is for me too. Is you just have that anxiety of like wanting it to be done and like for everyone to love you because you did this really cool thing. You just want the good part of it. And I think that's kind of one of the things that comes with age and maturity is starting to learn that it's more about the process and it's just more about the lifestyle. And there's one thing I've been working on in my head lately, and I kind of, maybe this will be a topic for another video. And this isn't fully formed, so this could be totally disastrous when I try to describe this. But it's like any relationship. If you have a relationship with someone you love, the relationship is not about some payoff. It's about just existing within the relationship. And I know some people are very anxious when they make art to be like, they're motivated. They get up in the morning and they're saying, someday I'm going to die. So I need to finish as much art as possible before I die. And as I think about that, I think those individual pieces of art probably don't matter. It's kind of like if you love someone, it doesn't matter. That last hug, it's like, I need to get in 3 more hugs with this person before I die. It's the relationship that matters, right? It's like if you have loved well in your relationship, that's what's important. I'm starting to feel that's the case with art too. It's like, it isn't like the world is going to be is going to miss this wonderful thing that I'm going to give to the world. That's not why I make art. It should be more about like, this is the place I need to exist in. This is the relationship I need to have with the world is in making art. And,
I can't wait till Ann goes to work tomorrow morning. I'm gonna be like, I gotta hug you 3 times.
I didn't get in enough hugs. Yeah.
Because you're not gonna be here forever.
That's. I mean, I guess you're describing having a different lens, a different perspective.
Yeah.
And in trying to find a way to have comfort in a different context that lens provides, where it's not about it's probably, I'm guessing it's a coexisting kind of lens, right? Because I assume you have some goals and
Sure.
whatnot too, but maybe that changes how you relate to them.
Yeah, in some ways, I think it's a coping strategy for me because I'm so slow and with stuff that I create.
Dude, you're not alone. Like, I mean, it took me for the recent video game I finished. And I say recent. It's been a while since I released it. This Panda Needs You. It took me 2 years to get that out the door.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And when you finally release it, you're like, I've been working on this for 2. Well, I saw something appeared on my Facebook feed the other day, and it was like, here's what you were doing 5 years ago. And it was a picture of me drawing like the first page of Green Monk in this new story I'm telling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so depressing.
Oh my, wow. So, let's see. Maybe the Facebook hey, remember this thing feature isn't as good for that perspective, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe Facebook is not good for a lot of things.
Do we want to talk about another one of Brandon's videos?
Yeah. So and again, like they're so awesome to watch. Actually, I did take the time to watch one that I know that might be the third one we talk about. But like I'm really curious about like this idea. I'm a fan of making visual marks, and that it's not an exclusive thing based on skill and whatever. So, but I'm curious, what do you mean when you say everyone should draw, Brandon?
Okay. So I've just been reading some really interesting stuff about this lately, talking about the history of drawing, and just this idea that drawing used to be a much more universal skill. Like a lot more people would do them, particularly in like I think the sciences. You'd have a lot more people like these old notebooks that are, Audubon, James Audubon. If you're going to go study the world, you're going to take a sketchbook out there and you're going to draw pictures out in the world. And obviously, when photographs came along, a lot of people stopped doing that. And what some people are starting to come back and realize is that the purpose of the drawing isn't just to record it for other people, but it's also drawing is a tool for memory. It's a really, really powerful memory tool. So like if you want to remember some sort of image or whatever it is, like learning to draw, and if you know how to draw, I mean, the whole process of drawing is a process of visual memory. You look at an image, you have to capture it in your memory and then, reproduce it on a piece of paper. So it's this way of kind of building visual memory. And I talk specifically about this experience I had of doing I'm sure it was a substandard, portrait of my mom when I was in high school, but I still have a very, very vivid memory of that specific image that I drew of my mother. So I guess that's one of the ideas. I mean, I talked about some other things, but for me, that's the most compelling idea. Is it just can be this tool for memory, for kind of just being in a moment to really like crystallize moments. I think much better than you within your own memory, much better than you could with a camera. That's kind of the thought behind it.
I think, there's a variety of sources that reinforce your message there. One area I think of is the whole sketch notes movement and the doodle revolution, which is it's not quite as sort of scientific, observational, detailed drawing as some of the stuff you referenced, but it's really you're sitting there in a meeting or a talk or watching a movie, and you just want to capture the experience and relate to it in a deeper way. Using techniques that like for instance the Sketchnote Handbook by Mike Rohde.
I'm writing this down, by the way.
What's that?
I'm writing this down.
Oh,
this will be linked in the show notes too.
Yeah, the Doodle Revolution is by Suni Brown, and Sketchnote Handbook is by Mike Rohde, Rhode. And I totally agree. It's like a great memory tool that, for me, it recontextualized. Like I doodled a lot in school, and that's not always celebrated as a habit, and that yet those doodles, those lines, and different, whether I was writing text and making it into a metal logo that was about the topic that I was working on, or drawing a skull holding maybe a skeleton holding a beaker, then having some science notes next to it too from chemistry class. That stuff helped me remember things.
Yeah. And I think that's what you're bringing up here. I think is a total novel kind of approach to it than what I was thinking about. This very, kind of raw, direct kind of visual memory thing. I think what you're talking about that's really cool is kind of this associative type sketching and doodling, where you can create kind of these novel, imaginative, kind of doodles and sketches that kind of demonstrate how ideas connect and might even kind of map how they connect in your own mind. So I wish we would have had this discussion before. I could have included that in my as another good reason.
I mean, if we're helping you develop content for your future videos, all the better.
I'm just going to take this episode and just put it on my YouTube channel and put a drawing over the top of it.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
I was wondering though, like you say that everybody should learn to draw. What specific types of things could? Because Brandon, I'm actually asking this selfishly as a teacher who teaches people sometimes who don't, who are truly frightened of drawing. What kind of things would you recommend to somebody who's never drawn before?
So this is something I've been working over and over my head for the last several years, and I'm gonna do a post about this at some point, or a video about this in specific. But as a preview, kind of what I've thought through in my head is that I think really the best place for any novice to start is with traditional observational drawing. And I mentioned this a little bit, I think maybe when we had our last discussion about visual memory and perception. I just think observation is the best gateway into everything else you're going to want to do as an artist. I think in specific, we discussed this before too, like portraiture. I think is a really great place to start, because you have that part of your brain that's going to be it's going to be checking your work for you, because human brains are so tuned to recognize human faces, and they're very picky about how human faces look. So it's this really fantastic tool to help you make your drawings as accurate as possible. And so in this phase, observational drawing, it's really about making things accurate. That's the most important part about it, is just measuring, fixing the little bits and pieces. If you're starting out and you do that over and over and over again, that's the best way to kind of like get a jump start. And from there, then you can go into things like learning construction, learning how things in general work, and starting to build things from memory. So
you're anticipating what my follow-up to that was going to be, which is how do you measure improvement? Because like if I start working out, I'm going to see either like enhanced, like I can go longer, I'm getting stronger, or I'm losing weight, or there's going to be some kind of like feedback to let me know that, okay, this is amounting to something.
Yeah.
But when you're drawing and you don't have an instructor there, what's the rubric?
So part of that, like I said, I do think that the portraiture thing is part of it, just because your mind, if you do a series of portraits over a month, let's say you do one every day over a course of a month, your own kind of internal sense of how a person should look is going to help you with that. There are other things you can do to test yourself as you're doing observational work. So the other thing you can do is you can work from a photograph or from the computer, so that when you finish your drawing, you can actually take it literally into Photoshop or some other program and I think doing overlays like that are super helpful. You can put it over the top, and once you do those multiple times, you can start seeing themes kind of emerge. Be like, oh, I always make this too short or this too long. But there's this part of learning that's the kind of feedback part that's super important to like solidifying a lesson. And when you put up your work up against the real thing and see the errors, like seeing those errors is a super important part of learning and getting better and refining that skill. So another thing you can do, there's this super boring, mind-numbing exercise for observation, but I still really like it. Just go to the internet and look up cardboard box on the internet, and get a picture of a cardboard box, and then do your best job to draw an exact copy of the cardboard box. And what you can do is literally take your piece of paper and lay it over the top of the image. And so even if it's a different size, angles are never going to change, regardless if something is bigger or smaller. And you can match the corners, and the corners should match up. And so being perceptive of angles is part of observing things right. So that's a great one, just to kind of get a better sense of drawing angles accurately and perceptively. But
that's also, I would think, would be a cool warm-up too.
Yeah, I think it's a good warm-up. Yeah. So I've had very, very little luck convincing other people to try out the exercise, though.
It's I'm writing it down. I've been, like, this is a bit of an aside, but like I've been trying to incorporate workouts into my days, even though they're like super jam-packed. I'm finding that because they're so jam-packed that there's this boatload of resistance meeting me in the morning.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do all this stuff. But then like just committing to a simple warm-up exercise sort of like gets me over that initial speed bump.
Sure.
And I find that like committing a half hour to that means a bigger payoff in productivity throughout the day. Like I attend to it more easily.
So I will say this, kind of going back, back when we had our first discussion about visual memory and such, and visual, I started kind of just experimenting with lots of different exercises. This was one of them. This box drawing was one of them I experimented with. I liked it, but I just found not very many other people wanted to do it. I tried to, when I was doing coaching, I tried to get people to do it, and most of the students I was coaching just weren't interested in it. Just really unsexy. So, but this other exercise I just posted today, this memory drawing exercise, I found that people are much more like engaged by it. And, you know, it's still very challenging. So that's kind of part of what I've been trying to figure out, is I'm trying to find exercises that are challenging and help people grow, but that people actually want to do and are engaged by. So that's kind of the,
I bet that cardboard box seems like it's almost a hot jam exercise. It's just like it needs a little spice, right? Maybe find your favorite cereal box from growing up, right? Or turn the box into something after the end of it. Food for thought, right?
But the thing is, even though it is tough, it's a very quick exercise at the very least. I mean, you can do it 5 to 10 minutes. You can do it. You're just like, I'm trying to get, you know, 4 or 5 angles accurate, you know? So hopefully that's maybe a better way to package it. And then, yeah, like you say, draw something fun on it or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
all right,
because
so
you could pick a side of the box to put a logo for make a joke out of it, right?
Put teeth on it, turn it to a monster.
Aha, nice teeth. Yep, googly eyes. Yeah, that's excellent.
do we want to talk about what we're worth?
Do we want to talk about what we're worth? That's an intense question, Jerzy. What do you mean by this?
How worthy are we feeling?
What? By the way, what are we worth? What? Actually, you tackled it. I'm being silly. You tackled this as a topic. Yet another one of your essays on your YouTube channel, Brandon. And that was it's a potentially pretty heavy topic, and you dig into some good advice and whatnot. What sort of prompted you to get that one out into the world?
Well, I should say first off that, I mean, the title, I would say, is, of course, your self-worth is not based on how much you make. So trying to have a quick, snappy title, but I do want to kind of get to I wanted to try to communicate the whole point of it as simple as possible. But yeah, the way this kind of emerged is, I'm trying to remember how I got to this. I think I listened to, long ago, I listened to an episode of On the Media where they talked about the NLRB, the National Labor Relation Board. And they just said some things on there that I was kind of surprised by, that I was like, oh, that's unusual. And so I just started digging into it and kind of discovered, you know, all these things about kind of labor rights. And that's kind of one section of the video, is talking about labor rights and your right to collective bargaining and things like that I thought was particularly this issue of sharing your wage. And so that's something I had been in my experience, you know, told several times in jobs, like, don't talk about your wage, don't talk about your wage with other people. And I just didn't think twice about it. And then I think in this episode, they might've discussed that in specific. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, I'm going to start asking my coworkers what they make, you know, and when I left EA, I had lunch with one of my former coworkers, and he was like the first one that actually talked to me openly. He's like, oh, I made this much. And it was like a punch in the gut, because he made like almost 10 or 15,000 more a year than I did.
Okay.
And we essentially kind of had the same job there. So it was one of these things where it's like, oh, like when I first heard it, it's like, oh, you know, and it's an uncomfortable conversation, but it was like a super valuable conversation for me to have. And so I don't want to get into too specifics, but it helped me in my jobs after that to be able to negotiate, because I knew how much he made and I wasn't going to ask for less than that after I went to like other jobs. So that's kind of I think the biggest takeaway I was trying to express within the video is just that, you know, this whole idea of sharing your wage with other artists, particularly people you work with, people in the same field as you, it's benefits you, it benefits them, and it benefits all other artists. And it's like a pricing thing, like in economics, like the better information is shared, like the better price you're going to get, the more accurate the price information you're going to get. And so it's just a benefit to artists if you share your wages with one another. Everyone's going to have a more clear idea of what wage they should ask for when they're going in and negotiating for a wage in a job. So
yeah, I mean, you had this theme of like essentially data. Like data will help you be better positioned to go through that negotiation.
And I kind of felt like if I was going to try to make this argument, hey, you guys should share your wage with one another, I should share every detail I could about like, what my earnings had been too. So I could kind of put my money where my mouth was in the process.
Hey, Brandon, this episode of On the Media you were talking about wouldn't happen to be from 2011, would it?
It might be. Are you trying to look it up?
I was trying to find the exact episode. It was labor's image problem. Pro-union protesters are still turning out in Wisconsin to rally against Governor Scott Walker's proposed legislation that would, among other things, strip unions of their collective bargaining rights.
That's not it. I'll look it up. If you want it for the show notes, it was specifically about social media, like talking about your work on social media. And they talk about this idea of you have the right to say things about your work as long as it's not what they call mere griping. That's like the phrase they use, the legal phrase they use for it. That if you are communicating important information, workplace information, you have the right to share that publicly. That's basically the idea. But if you're just like, oh, my boss is such a jerk, I hope he dies in the sewer, like you can get in trouble for that. So.
Okay. That kind of makes sense. I mean, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What else was I really liked how you contextualize. So not that we have to like cover every single point you cover in your video. People need to go just go to your channel and watch all of these. And but the what you're worth, I really like how you were exploring the setting the context for how making visual art for a living is different than other professions in a couple of ways. And a lot of times I think we get hung up on that, where because I like doing this, I feel guilty for getting paid for it, or because and that kind of dynamic feeds in, and and yet it's like that thing is like a thing to figure out how you can recontextualize and get over it. But then it's also a fact that it's not as dangerous as other jobs and whatnot too. So like what let's see where I guess what led you to sort of I mean, did you have to think through that for like a job you were on?
Well, the kind of thought that led me to that was just I'm trying to remember like where I kind of decided to bring that up. It's very common. You'll see a lot of stuff. People all the time post videos or commentary. They're like, hey, this is actual work. Pay me for being an artist. Or they'll talk about, oh, here's these ridiculous things clients ask for and how they devalue art and this type of thing. And it's like, yeah, those type of posts are right. Like people do need to respect that art is a job. But like we also need to understand as artists that just like there are these big economic factors that affect those or cultural factors that affect those perceptions. There's factors that affect why people undervalue art, and they're kind of understandable factors. It's not just like, hey, if I was a plumber, you wouldn't say this to me. Well, the truth is that the economics of plumbing is completely different than the economics of making art. And like you say, most people, when they first start getting paid for art, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm asking someone to pay me for art. Are they really going to pay me for art? This is like unbelievable, because it seems like unreal. It seems unreal that that's a job for most people that make art. People want to make art. And so, yeah, you're right. It's like that idea that when there is a job, when there's a profession that lots of people want to do and lots of people are willing to sacrifice lots of things to be in, it's going to affect the prices and the wages in that profession,
Just what you're describing right now, this is why I think that like that video is gold, and what you put out and how you think through and share your information is awesome. That you're doing a lot of perspective taking right there, where it's so easy to say like, you wouldn't say this to a plumber, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you're digging deeper and you're going, well, why? And so what's different? Okay, so fine, maybe I wouldn't. Well, but okay, so what is different about the situation of a plumber versus an artist? So that hearing your thought process is pretty fantastic on that, and really, it's like you tackle a variety of angles on the whole, what you're worth financially as an artist topic. That I don't know. Glad I wanted to highlight that one.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, art's a big ephemeral thing. There's no standardization to it. And one thing you find working, like I've been on both sides of hiring, where I'm trying to get a job, and also like where we're trying to hire someone, and trying to hire an artist to fill a role in a game studio is the most difficult thing to do, because it isn't like you can just fit a cog into like a missing gap. Every artist comes with their own skill set, their own abilities. And so it's a different beast. Yeah.
That actually sounds like another pretty cool topic. How would you break that? Just trying to check into the whole future topic mine of stuff that's ultimately then I can add that to my playlist later on. So what do you think, Jerzy? How are we doing for
I think this would be a good time to take a break before we get at talking about this leveling up in art. We talked about a lot of different ways that Brandon thinks about leveling up in art, but like a thing that you do in all your videos that we touched on a little tiny bit, but we didn't go into great detail on, was how this sort of affects everything else in your life. Like, so to go back to why everybody should draw, like part of the case you make in there is that, and you said like about like memory building, but just the idea of this, to use some terminology used on past shows, this monastic approach, this checking in and not thinking about goal oriented, but as much as like showing up and with grit and grinding. What kind of side effects does that have on the rest of your life? What kind of practical benefits can be derived from that? So that's where we're gonna go next.
Okay, cool.
What kinds of different changes can you expect in your life when you check in and do your art on a regular basis?
Yeah.
But before we do that, we've got to thank some people who make this show possible. And we're going to thank some people who support us on this thing called Patreon. And Patreon, if you haven't heard of it, it's just a thing like Kickstarter. Go ahead. Rob?
Quick pause. I think we need to recover our connection here.
Oh.
I'm getting some funny.
Okay, now you're starting to sound better. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, no, this is going to cause a minute pointer what have you for the for audio. I'll take care of that. Just wanted to see if we could just get our bandwidth all caught up.
Okay.
Or how are you sounding, Jerzy?
Brandon's coming in perfectly clear to me, but you're coming in really choppy.
Yeah, Rob's coming in choppy to me too.
It's me. Okay, interesting. What's happening?
Okay, I was concerned as my computer, because sometimes it overheats when I do Hangouts.
We're going to quickly check our ping times. Check mine. Oops. How about I take my screen sharing off for this?
I'm just going to pretend like I'm checking my ping time by fake typing. I have no idea how to check ping time.
I was just going to go to speed test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, speed test, that'll definitely actually, it exercises your connection, so they'll make us slow. But you can also open up a command line, so like terminal and terminal in Mac OS, and then you can say ping, or you can I think what it's called Windows. It's been a long time.
I've got 12 milliseconds ping time, Rob. Download 92 megabits.
Yeah, mine is garbage. So okay. Somehow my connector has gone crap.
Mine looks pretty good.
Okay. All right. So sorry for the delay. It's just I'm doing the recording, and that's not going to sound great. So nobody streaming in the house either. I just checked on that. So just bad internet weather. And
you want to kill your camera and just have audio?
All right. Well, yeah, sure. Let's try that.
All right.
Okay.
Still bad news. No. Still coming in kind of choppy.
It's not just choppy. It sounds a little bit like the adults in Peanuts.
Yeah, it sounds like auto-tune. Everybody's saying, trying to do that.
Yeah, can you just like sing a song?
Fancy remixes, yeah. So I have no idea.
Well, Rob will troubleshoot.
All right, so sorry for the delay here. I'm gonna sign off and come back.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So while Rob signs off and comes back, we can vamp with.
Okay.
Now this thing you were talking about is in terms of the checking in and the not thinking about the goal. And you said something a little earlier about how it's a maturity and outlook thing.
Yeah.
I wrote this down and I was just gonna pitch it as a question or throw it out. I wasn't even gonna use it, but since we're here, I was thinking about how there's the end of the adventure movie where everybody's exulting in their success and we survived and everything's great now. And like, you know, Rob and I always use Karate Kid as an example on the show. It's one of our favorite movies. And I think about any time I've ever had any kind of significant feedback where it's like, this means something. This is a good thing. I ask myself, does it ever feel as good as what that moment promises? You know, and like it almost never feels quite as good as what that screen looked like. You know,
that's exactly what I was going to get to. You know, I just finished this update with Green Monk, and it was great to finish it.
Yeah.
But it definitely there is part of there. I had like kind of a couple depressing days after I finished that. You know, because you are wanting that end of the movie moment where it's like, we made it, you know? Yeah. It was very satisfying. It was satisfying seeing it finished, and it's good to see people's response to it and be like, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. But yeah, it's like one of these lessons of life that you just kind of have to learn that like, oh, it's just this like, it's one point in this process, you know? And I think about the whole process of being excited for an idea and sketching that down and just the whole, what was it? I was watching, what's the name of the movie? Inside Llewyn Davis, the Coen Brothers movie about the folk singer.
Okay.
Which I loved. I thought it was a great movie about art. And I watched the special features on the DVD. I got it from the library. And gosh, Oscar Isaacs. I can't remember what his name is. Poe Dameron in the new Star Wars. I can't remember his exact name.
Okay.
But he's commenting on the role, and he's talking about how like in his conversations with the Coen brothers, something to the effect of, you know, the struggle is like the purpose of it. It isn't about this end thing, but it's like the struggle that is. You know, when you tell a story, an adventure story, the struggle is the purpose of the story. Yeah. And so you think about those times when it's just kind of these lonely, you're by yourself, trying to work through a page, working through the problems, not seeing the end in sight. You know, and that's just kind of the lesson you learn little by little, is that that's the point of it, you know. You want to get through it. You want to get through it so fast, but like that process is the whole purpose of it.
Right. No. Yeah. And one could glibly say the joy is in the journey, right?
Yeah.
And like, oh, wow, that sounds terrific. And that
I'm not going to say the joy is. It's the meaning is in the journey. I'll say that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's like I'm 1 month away from like a big significant portion of the deadline in the book I'm working on, and like I'm catching myself in that mental state of I just want it to be over.
Yeah.
I love making comics. I love comics so much, but I just want this damn thing to be over so bad.
Yeah.
And it takes some reminding to myself that like, no, this part has its own meaning, and this is the part that you're going to reflect on later on. This is the part where you're being changed right now by what's happening, and you can't tell what changes are happening, but you're going to see a different you. And I think that kind of point of view can only come out of doing it a bunch of times.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's unfortunate just because I'm so slow in that process. I don't get to learn that lesson as quickly as I want. But the best part of the movie, the best part of any movie, any story, is when the hero is about to fail, and but makes it right. That's
when Mike Wazowski throws the slush ball at James P. Sullivan's head.
Yeah,
he turns around. His best friend, his lifelong friend, is utterly enraged with him.
Yeah,
that's the best part.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to make another point along those lines. The timing for this couldn't have been better, but my brother just today posted, I can't remember the name of the comic series, but it's like inspired quotes or something. They take quotes and they make little comics out of them.
Oh, Zen pencils. Yeah.
Zen pencils. That's right. The one about Stephen King. And I had read On Writing before.
Mm-hmm. And
for some reason, this hadn't struck me as hard as it did the first time I read On Writing. But he talks about his story of his desk and how he used to have this giant desk, and he was like this drunk captain on this ship that was almost ready to capsize because he was doing drugs and drunk all the time and just totally reckless. And it wasn't until he had this like kind of humble desk in the corner in proportion to its importance and he got sober too, that things came back into their balance. And what's the line he says at the end? He says that he used to think, Daddy, you need to go to bed. I need to go to bed? My son's reminding me of the very point I'm going to make. He makes this point that he said, I used to think that the point of life was to support art, and I learned that it's the other way around, that art is supposed to support life. And it just like I'll come to bed in a little bit.
Hey, Rob.
Hi.
You sound and look a lot better.
You look great. And you know what? Your eyes have totally cleared up too. I don't know what happened.
So, you know what? I just had to do a quick support call with Comcast. Fixed everything.
Awesome.
Uh-huh.
All right. You all right? Ready to...
I'm great. Yes. Thank you for being patient. Sorry.
Oh no, we were digging a little deeper into some earlier points while we waited for you to come back. So
okay.
Cool. All right. So I'm gonna plow through and do the sponsor read for our friends who support us on Patreon. Then is that cool?
Very cool.
Okay. So if you haven't heard of Patreon, it's like a Kickstarter, but it's for ongoing things. So instead of making one pledge one time to get a thing, it's an ongoing pledge. You get smaller micro payments, like $1 a month, to help make this show more sustainable. And we want to thank 5 people who have been doing just that by supporting us on Patreon and making the show, more viable, more sustainable. Mike White, and you can find Mike White's comics on Instagram. It's at FE Follies. And then Owen Jolins, friend of the show for a long time and been on the show, comic colorist on Twitter, and professional comic colorist. You can see some of his work there when he posts it. Rachel Ross, also a longtime friend of the show, at NYC Terrace on Twitter. Then we also have to say thanks to Jonathan Warrenson, who I don't have a Twitter account for or Twitter address for, but if you want to share it with me, Jonathan, we'd love to talk about it on the show. And then finally, Todd Lauzen. Oh, did I say no? It's Lozan. because I had a conversation with Todd about this, about the pronunciation of his name, and I said, that sounds like a He-Man character, and he said, it's up to you to design him. And I said, I might just take you up on that. So thank you to everybody who supported us on Patreon. If you do decide to join us, we have the extra leans. There's going to be a new one posted tonight. And there's also the open mic post where it's for members only, where you can talk with us and, in a safe place that is only for patrons. And we thank everybody who has supported us on Patreon. All right. Ready to do 10,000 feet?
Do it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'll go with more exciting music.
Gonna go for powered descent.
So,
Go. Guide.
we'll go for launch to go 10,000 feet up and talk about a little bit more of an abstract
Go.
topic than actual drawing exercises. But what do you accomplish, Brandon, when you decide to check in and do a thing over and over again? What changes in your life? What practical benefits have you derived out of this? Is it like a worldview thing that changes? Is it like a physical change? Is it like a lifestyle change? What happens?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's still something I'm in the process of learning. And it seems like the timing for this couldn't have been better, because this stuff feels like it's all been like raining on me lately, where it's kind of these epiphanies right now of how this, all fits together. For so many years, my idea of art was just like this whole idea of just push, 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 drive, 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 just like do everything you can, give everything you can to this. Man, I went through some phases where I had some deep burnout, and it was burnout where it was like, not like, oh, I need a weekend. It was burnout where it took me, a long time to recover, and so now I'm in a phase where I'm saying like, okay, like we were just saying, art needs to find its correct place in life. It needs to find its correct priority in life. And so that's kind of, I think, what it is, and this is kind of this whole idea about this daily check-in. It kind of really started with Stephen Pressfield, who we've talked about before. And a lot of people, I think, when they read Pressfield, they take it as more of this push drive type of philosophy, where it's like, every day you must do this thing every single day, never make excuses, like this hardcore thing. And I don't think that's what it is. I think it's a much gentler, much more, contemplative way of approaching a daily practice. And you read Stephen Pressfield, and Stephen Pressfield's kind of like, I work until my mind feels foggy and I stop working. He's not someone where he's like, let's see if I can push myself a little bit more. He does his work, and then he stops doing his work when it's time to stop working. And so I think that's kind of the benefit. The benefit is that just it finds its correct place in life. So
a prioritization, skill gain, right? Having a sense of perspective to know, and this is something, Rob, you talk a lot about on the show, is signal reading, like listening to what your body's saying, and not just reacting to it, but like internalizing it and having a relationship with it, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, emotions are fantastic parts of our human experience, and they're totally a part of how our cognition works. They're not like to be dismissed and say, well, oh, settle down. I'm just going to grind myself to a nub and ignore how you have a lot of anxiety or stress or what have you. That what if you listen to it and tried to be informed by it in a way that wasn't like on fire urgent, like it's like it's a signal, it's a flag, it's a, oh wow, I should notice this and not tune it out kind of thing.
And I think that's like great stuff. And I think what's been really a lifelong challenge for me has been trying to sort out what is the wisest way to respond to those feelings. And I think that does take some, you have to pay attention to yourself. You have to have some mindfulness, because sometimes the feeling is frustration of, I can't draw this thing. And you kind of need to sit and stay with that. But other times it is, I am dying inside and I need to like not keep trying to like push myself so hard, and being able to sort through and parse those things can be pretty like damn tricky. That's like, it's like, should I be pushing myself right now? Maybe I should be taking it easy right now. Like,
well, I mean, it's tricky, like the movie Inside Out, right? I think have you both seen that?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so having a calm conversation with the emotion of flipping out, it's not easy to do. But like if flipping out just basically gets to be like, it doesn't, it's, if maybe there's a slightly more mellow emotion that is, understands flipping out, but you kind of have a dialogue with, your emotional side, that flipping out just literally is acting like a flag of like, stop and think about this. But if you just then act out of the, intense, scarcity-minded concern that, this drawing is literally killing me. Is it really? I don't, like there's probably something worth noticing, right? But like, if you take it too literally, then you may not be making that most wise decision, like you were describing, Brandon.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's tough to work through. I mean, I had an experience a couple Christmases ago where it was literally Christmas Eve, and I was at the studio I was working at that time, and just like angrier than I had ever remembered being, and ready to throw things across the room, and just like having this moment where it got so bad that I'm like, what? Like, why has it got to this point? How have I let myself get to this point that I could be so angry right now? So that's probably one of those cases where if I started paying attention to the signals much earlier, I probably could have avoided being in that place.
I mean, that's the idea. I mean, it's not easy or straightforward, but like it's a practice thing.
Yeah.
It's no different than the Rubik's Cube skill conceptually. Oh,
that's a terrific. Here's how I want to maybe potentially close off this part of the discussion before we get to final thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about, checking in, commitments to things, and also Rob, when you bipped out there for a second, we kind of talked about how the media narrative, the adventure narrative, is like this exaltation at the end of the third act when everything gets fixed, and like Brandon and I were asking the question, does it ever feel that good? And like the meaning being more in the actual struggle of it. But also this idea that, and there was a You Are Not So Smart podcast, they're talking about progress recently. One of the most recent episodes, they're talking about progress. And there's this assumption, I think, that we had, at least I've had, is that you level up, you get better, and then it's easier next time. And then you level up and you get to World 3.3, you get to World 3.4, you get to World 3.5, and it's this linear progression of just pushing hard and overcoming things, and then eventually just, you get super awesome at it, and then you don't struggle with it anymore. And then it wasn't until A, got older, and B, started engaging with things like meditation, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm never going to be like floating in the room, I'm never going to be like guys with guns come at me and I can just go like, it's okay, and I just like move my hands and they just go away, This is something where I not only constantly have to struggle, but sometimes I'm going to regress, and sometimes I'm going to have to get back on it again, and there's this like, some things become more efficient, some things become less efficient, but it's not a linear arc. It's more of like an ebb and a flow, right? I'm wondering if this kind of like commitment to like leveling up at art is sort of, I don't know, to use a maybe potentially a less elegant phrase, like a meditation on that whole aspect of anything that you take on as a challenge in life, right?
Yeah.
Did I say anything there?
So no. What I'm hearing is that that you're prompting us for our final thought, right? And the final thought is, what do we think about, like, what's our relationship with that commitment to ongoing leveling up?
Rob is my partner this week, everybody.
We're a team.
That's pretty good. Okay, so we got some comments in the chat before we go to final thought. Becca Hilburn's in here and she says, I'm so glad Brandon brought up the frustration and anger that can stem from burnout. It's something that really overwhelmed me last year, and it's something no one talks about. I was so disappointed in myself. I thought I was broken because I didn't find joy in the work I produced every day, like I was a bad artist, right? I can tell you, as somebody who has like spent a lot of years being a very vocal and outgoing cheerleader for his chosen medium, when I experienced a burnout, there was like a slight little bit of apprehension and like, can I even talk about this, right? It's like telling the world that, you know, sometimes I don't love my wife or something, right? Like there's something shameful inherently about it in having a bad relationship with the thing that you've gone into the whole world saying, I love it so much, right? So of course you love it like that all the time, right, Brandon?
Oh, geez. I've been through more years lately not wanting to pick up a pencil than I'd like to admit, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, I lost my train of thought. I was gonna add something onto that.
Oh, just like she was a bad artist because she didn't find joy in the work that she produced every day.
No, but I understand. I'll just say that I understand that, and here's what I'm gonna say. I think one of the things you got to get to is just finding balance. You know, we don't want burnout, but at the same time, like the product of millions of years of evolutions in humans isn't for us to sit comfortably on the couch all day and watch Netflix. We have to find the right amount of challenge and discomfort, and that's part of like the trick in finding happiness and satisfaction of life is just, you know, not getting too comfortable, but also not burning out. So
yeah, the example I always think of is Boxer from Animal Farm. I'll just work harder.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to him.
Oh, geez, yeah. Work ethic can be kind of dangerous if you aren't careful.
It totally can, but like I want to make it very clear that as recently as like 8 years ago, when I was still doing podcasts, I was one of those guys who got out in front and said, like, you know, you make the time because you love it. That's why. You know, rub some dirt on it, get back in there, make some comics. You know, I was totally that guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure people could dig up a recording if they really wanted to. And yeah, you know what? My relationship changed as I got a little older. And we're going to talk more about how our relationship changes with this stuff in about a minute or 2 minutes, right, Rob? Because we got to thank a few other people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be us. And we make other stuff that we want you to know about. And the first thing I'll talk about is my beloved webcomic, Boulder and Fleet, at boulderandfleet.com. What's it about? Well, it's about animals doing people things and having adventures, but it's really about what it's about is it's about how I as a child I had a very interesting relationship with the notion of violence, and I decided at a very early age that I was a pacifist, and it was difficult for me to reconcile that feeling when I was surrounded by action heroes who solved all their problems by shooting people and hitting people. And very few pacifist heroes. So Boulder and Fleet is sort of my way to address that idea. Celebrate the wonderful excitement and kineticism of action and adventure, but with heroes who genuinely don't want to fight and try to find other ways to solve the problems. You can find it at boulderandfleet.com. It's also posted natively on Instagram and on Twitter. And there's a Patreon. If you really love the comic and want to help me make more of it, you can go to patreon.com/Jerzy in order to support it. Rob, you make a game.
I do. I make a game that I think it's coincidentally also pacifistic because it's really it's an all ages thing that you are helping a little cute panda stack up blocks, because the blocks were already put into interesting shapes and configurations, but then they get knocked down by this little cloud that keeps coming along, and you put things back right. The panda celebrates as you do it, and it's a pretty mellow gaming experience, but you know, like puzzle solving, so satisfying as well. And especially you get to see a panda dance. So you can play this on your iPhone or iPad, and you can learn more about it at this-panda.com or search the iTunes App Store for This Panda.
And if you did buy it and you've already, you know, months ago, you're like, hey, I've already supported this game, giving it a rating on iTunes if you haven't done that yet in the iTunes Store. That helps more people find it.
Cool, thank you.
But if you're here because you really like the way we chew on ideas and you really, you're happy for us that we make stuff, but you're more interested in the way we think about stuff, then I would recommend you go to leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download at a price of your choosing. Price could even be $0. There's video workshops where I teach comics classes. Rob teaches a workshop called Making Video Games from Your Creator-Owned Comics. Also, some UI classes. So, like, if you're making a comic and you're like, well, I want to put it on a website, but I don't know really how to think about, user interface. What's even an approach to it? Rob gives you like a nice framework for thinking about it. What are you gonna say, Rob?
No, right on. Thanks. And obviously, there's that whole FATAM workshop available from Jerzy Droz at leanintoart.com/workshops is a tour de force of really getting into the mindset and tools that Jerzy uses to visualize sound, the whole onomatopoeia, the magic of making physical and visual sound feeling in comics. Get into his mind by getting that workshop.
I think about it entirely too much, and you can listen to 4 hours of me talking about it. And then finally, if you don't want to, purchase anything today, but you want to let us know that you appreciate what we do, then you can give this video a thumbs up. That helps more people find the show. Or if you're listening to it in audio, giving the show a rating on iTunes. 5-star review would be really nice. You don't even have to write a review. Just give us a 5-star review. That helps make it more, visible in searches so that more people can find the show. And thanks to everybody who has supported us.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, final thought time.
So the final thought being, it sounds like how do we relate now to this idea of leveling up and put it in some kind of way that's, I'm guessing thematically, it's probably not quite as brutal as maybe once framed. Probably was framed in a more severe way at some point. Is that fair to say?
Was for me.
Yeah. Me too. Brandon?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
So what happened then? So why is so let's all share the nutshell of why is it different now, and why is that better?
You guys go first, so I can get an idea of how this is supposed to go.
Okay. Rob?
Oh, sure. I love Dragon Ball Z, right? So one of the things that I've experienced in the show is just this constant push and this theme of how basically everyone believes in themselves becoming stronger and more capable as individuals, but then some of those individuals, like a big team of them, especially those folks that defend the Earth against difficult things that show up, they really team up to make each other stronger. And so they don't just believe in themselves. So they have this feedback loop of an encouraging community and this drive and whatever. And that really resonates with me on a few thematic levels. But I think it's easy to take away from that kind of thing, or looking at someone of high skill and being inspired, like watching a video from Brandon and being like, well, I feel empowered and encouraged, and I have enough context. Or like things like actually Becca Hilburn shares tons of awesome info, and you can find artists to follow and get inspired and feel like I see that next stepping stone and keep pushing, or tie that to like your output and keep pushing. And it's easy to over romanticize that, and I feel that I've found, instead of like a quick explosive relationship with my creativity and my skill building over time and the projects I take on, I feel more like it's more sustainable. I don't feel a balance at all, because I juggle a lot of stuff, but I don't feel out of balance in a way that is causing some really hurtful disharmony in how I see myself in the world around me. But that took a lot of practice, and it's not perfect or easy. It's an ongoing practice. So the outcome of that is that I feel less severe when I'm planning a goal and thinking about how am I going to get there, and and how am I checking in? And when I'm checking in, am I encouraging myself, or am I doing some harsh judgments? And like, where maybe I wouldn't notice I was doing that some years ago, but like I notice it. I'm like, no, settle down here. I want to be, I guess, yeah, kinder about it all, yet still be like Dragon Ball Z. How's that?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
What about
Brandon?
you guys?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just trying to think of like a good kind of way to describe it. I would say, there's a difference between going for a jog and running a race. Running a race, it's every once in a while, I think it's fantastic to run a race. But going for a jog is a totally different experience. That's something you do, you can do every day, maybe a bunch of times a week, but you do it regularly. You energize yourself, you're moving forward, you're seeing sights, you're seeing the world, but you're not trying to like beat someone. You're not trying to like, get a certain time or anything. And I think that's kind of how I'm trying to see making art nowadays. It's just about, it's this pleasant jog. It's about this experience of getting out, getting your artistic heart pumping, and exploring your imagination, and your limits, I guess, in a certain way. So, just like don't break your foot or something, I guess. I don't, not to confuse the metaphor. I don't know what that would mean.
What I like about that metaphor is that, and like running, if you miss a couple weeks, if you paid attention to yourself at all, you'll know that you're not going to come back at the performance level that you were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and
that's
true.
true.
It'll be a little harder to like sort of ramp up to that again. But so that's part of the value of checking in as well.
Yeah. And as you know, going for a jog, it's like the hardest part is always, looking out the window first thing in the morning and saying, do I really want to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you never regret it when you're done. It's like one of those type of things. You never want to do it when you wake up, but you never regret it when you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, I've learned part of the value of it is like sort of like the checking out, right? It's checking in to check out, because like there's no agenda, and there's this is a chance to give my brain some time to like process without forceful process, right? Okay, let's think about the 5 things we need to think about today. Nope.
Yeah.
Let's just be for a second.
Yeah.
So in some ways, is this about acclimating to like, you take a break from the grind of all the commitments and maybe skill building that makes you more efficient at meeting your commitments, and you could get greater personal satisfaction over time through both the commitments and the skill. But then there's almost like a like the Rubik's Cube example, like the jogging metaphor, and I think you're both being literal about it too, as far as getting out and jogging.
Yeah,
it's purposefully injecting a task that isn't judged in that same way. That's not a professionalized task.
Yeah.
Almost. And that's a reminder, like there's other experience. You can possibly carry that experience of the non-professionalized task to your professional tasks. Maybe.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. And that's kind of one of the great lessons you can learn, is that the casual commitment to something can produce results just as much as like the checklisty push, here we go, make it happen type approach to things,
Right.
I mean, if you just keep taking steps forward, you're gonna finish eventually. You're gonna do something eventually.
Yeah, and something Brandon and I were talking about during the little technical hiccup that we had earlier, which, if people listening to the audio, what technical hiccup? It's gone. But the people watching on YouTube had a lot of fun. But like I talked about like this when being in the middle, having gone through this experience of making things over and over again, and like as you said, Rob, getting more efficient at it, and adding different pages to my playbook and running the plays so that there's a certain area where I'm really efficient. I have the perspective now that I know what I'm in for, even when it's unpleasant, even when it's like, oh, this is gonna suck. But I know what kind of monsters are in there, even if I don't know their shape yet. There's gonna be 3 Class 3 monsters in there, and 2 Class 2 monsters. Probably a surprise monster someplace. Might be a Cobalt, might be a Tiamat. I don't know. But I go in with a sense of expectation on this. But there's like this appreciation for the kind of this is going to sound like really dramatic and poetic, but kind of like a destruction of self that happens. There's like a part where I know I'm going to get mangled in this machine a little bit, and I'm going to come out the other end different, and I look forward to finding out what that person's going to be like. You know? And right now I'm in the destruction part, and I really can't give you a clear picture of what changes are happening. But when I come out all bloodied on the other side of that thing, it's like then there's gonna be like this extended period of reflection, and I'm gonna be like, okay, you know, this is how my perspective has changed after going through this particular dungeon crawl, you know. So that has made, and I can tell you, there's been personal experiences in my life where I've had some, you know, disappointments, some heartbreak in the last couple of years, where it was a lot. I think it became easier for me to engage with it for that reason, because there was almost a feeling of, oh, this is gonna ruin me. I wonder what I'm gonna be like on the other side of this.
Jeez.
Right? Sorry. I'll give you the exact story so that it doesn't sound so dreadful. But like my cat Lau, he's been my friend for 19 years. Last August he passed, and I mean, so he was very old. I knew the time was coming. I was relatively prepared for it. But I heard myself say, as Ann and I were really looking, you know, like it's looking bad, and we were kind of having a hard time dealing with this. And I said, like, yeah, but would you miss it? Would you miss it for anything? You know, this is part of the whole thing. This is part of the whole experience of loving something, is seeing it from like all of the cute little business at the beginning to all the dreadful, painful stuff at the end. That's the drink.
Shadowlands, right?
What?
Shadowlands? You've seen Shadowlands, haven't you?
No.
You're like a big C.S. Lewis guy, aren't you?
Yeah, but I haven't seen Shadowlands.
You haven't seen Shadowlands? It's Anthony Hopkins playing C.S. Lewis, and it's about him. It's about him, like, you know, getting married and then his wife dying, and her son, and he makes the comment when he's consoling the son. It's the boy from Jurassic Park plays the son too. That's his, like, he says, like, the happiness then was worth the pain now, or something like that.
See, that's Lewis for you. That's cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, that going as dumb as it sounds, going through deadlines kind of like made me more aware of that.
No, it makes sense.
Okay. Did I just like totally kill the show, Rob?
No, it's I think it's a poetic and very, very fitting ending.
Yeah.
This path of artistic ambiguity and challenge, and that's I like that we got the different lenses on it too. So I don't know. People can always rewind their podcast and pick a different lens. If you're too sad right now, you know, flip to chapter 2. I don't know. No, it wasn't that sad. I'm being silly.
Well, but you know what, Rob?
It's reasonable.
The sadness now is worth the happiness then. That's
this podcast is a microcosm
of life. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, Brandon,
Yeah.
I've missed you so much. Everybody, first of all, thank you, Brandon, for taking time to.
It was so much fun.
And people who are listening or watching, do go to Tapastic and check out Green Monk. You will not be sorry. It is an excellent piece of comics. Regardless of anything Brandon said today, it's truly it speaks for itself. It's so good. And then also go subscribe to. Oh, I should be pulling these up on the screen. So, you know, do subscribe to his YouTube channel as well, and check out his essays. They're fantastic. So YouTube user Brandon Dayton, and Green Monk is on Tapastic. You can do search for it there. So.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, Jerzy.
Yeah, this was great. So thanks everybody for downloading, listening, and watching. We'll be back next week with another show. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drost of leanintoart.com. Oh, Brandon, where can we find you on Twitter?
It's just Brandon Dayton on Twitter.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Follow him there. And I've been Jerzy Drost of leanintoart.com and Jerzy on Twitter.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
And okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'm going to shut off the stream. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us.
Yes, thank you.